And they really didn't know what they wanted. They wanted someone who could maybe help them with public service announcements. They wanted someone to write them, to do all of these things. Well, I had no clue how to do any of this. But my mantra has always been, just because I've never done something doesn't mean I can't. I just have to try.
Welcome to Lovely Esteem. I'm Lovely, the auntie you always wanted, the sister girlfriend you didn't know you needed, honey. You got to have self-love to have self-esteem. And here we know that God don't make no junk. So we're going to sit down, talk about it, and see how we can fix it, baby. Let's do it. Hey guys, this is Lovely with Lovely Esteem. And today on the Healing Through Conversations podcast, we have a special guest. Miss Liz Brunner, leveraging more than 35 years of media and communication experience, expertise, and leadership. Liz Brunner is an expert storyteller, certified professional consultant, best-selling author, podcast host, award winner, an Emmy award-winning journalist. Her career spans 3 decades, and she has so many more memorable moments. She was a co-anchor on the #1 rated 6 o'clock newscast. It was ABC TV in Boston. I don't know how I got here, okay? I just know that I prayed and I've been working on myself, and at some point I was allowed to be in a space like this. She's also interviewed not only global professionals, global politicians. She's been able to interview athletes. She's also been able to, I'm having a hard time saying this. Okay. She's also interviewed Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey. Listen, y'all, I'm a young lady. All right. And I believe in myself wholeheartedly. But there are times in my life where stuff starts to happen and I'm like, that time when I told the Lord I was a nuisance and he said, no, you wasn't. And I was like, he was like, I'm gonna show you something. And then he showed me and I was like, okay, Lord, I will go sit down now. And some days that happens. She's not only a strategist and a motivational speaker, she's been listed as one of the best professional speakers in the world. I want to learn from her. So please enjoy the podcast. Hey guys, this is Lovely with Lovely Esteem, and welcome back to the Healing Through Conversation podcast. Today, I have a lovely guest that I'm really honored to have her on here. I think when you are in this podcast space, this communication space, you don't always get to talk to people who have the experience, the know-how, and the knowledge that we're looking for. And sometimes you can't always be in the room, but this time I was in a room and she spoke and I said, yes, thank you, please join me. So today we get to speak with Miss Liz Brunner. Liz has experience on her resume that I'm not even sure I paid full attention to until about a week ago when I almost slid off of my chair. She has done so many things, but I think for me, the best thing that I learned about Liz was, one, she's a classical singer. I'm interested. And I loved her writing multiple books, I believe.
Only one so far, only one.
I thought I read one in 2020.
I'm working on another one, but there's only one published.
Okay. But I love that she is writing books to help you learn how to be the best version of yourself. And I think that women helping women see their value is the best thing. So thank you so much, Liz, for being a part of this podcast. Please introduce us to yourself.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me, Lovely. It's lovely to be on the Lovely Show. You know, it's interesting. You talked a little bit about some of my career paths here. Well, today, I'm actually a keynote speaker. I am a communications consultant coach. Some people call me a communications expert, which I enjoy hearing, I must admit. I have my own podcast as well, which is called Live Your Best Life with Liz Brunner. And it's all about people who have pivoted and made career transitions, recreated their lives, risen above tough times, transformed their lives. And then I also am an author, to your point. So those are the 4 things that I'm doing right now. But to your point that you brought up of being a classically trained singer, yes, I consider myself, Lovely, to be in my 4th career chapter. Chapter 1 was, in fact, when I was a classically trained singer, and I performed in Europe, traveled Europe, sang in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and Greece. And while in Italy, had an opportunity with the chorale that I was singing with to sing for Pope John Paul II in Vatican Square. Pretty amazing, I have to say.
Amazing.
Amazing. And simultaneously, I was teaching high school choral music at that time. But after a couple of years, Lovely, I felt like there was something more I was supposed to do. I didn't have a clue what it was. I just had this organic feeling deep within my soul, there's something more I'm supposed to do. I left the teaching profession, not knowing what I was going to do, worked in retail for a couple of years trying to figure it out. I was reading a wonderful book at that time, which I believe is still available. It's called Who's Hiring Who? It was written by Richard Lathrop. And he talks about informational interviews. I'd never heard of such a thing. I decided bravely, because I was considering all kinds of things. Did I want to go into construction? Did I want to become an interior designer or an architect? And I thought, I did one television commercial when I was Miss Illinois in the Miss America Scholarship Pageant. And I'm very proud of that because those scholarships helped pay for every penny of my education. And so I thought, I wonder if I would need to go back to school to get another degree to be in television. Did I need to become a communications major or an English major or something? And so I bravely called up 2 television stations that were in the area. I was living in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois at the time. I'll fast forward. One was an NBC affiliate, one was a CBS affiliate. And over the course of conversations of about 6 months' time with the CBS affiliate, a position was literally created for me. It never even existed. And they really didn't know what they wanted. They wanted someone who could maybe help them with public service announcements. They wanted someone to write them, to do all of these things. Well, I had no clue how to do any of this. But my mantra has always been, just because I've never done something doesn't mean I can't. I just have to try. And so I was thrown into this position. And I was figuring out how to get public service announcements onto the television. I was starting to write them. And then they said, we would like you to voice some of these. I was like, voice them? I mean, like put my voice to something, to a slide? And I would go into the sound booth, Lovely, and I'd be like, today, the Kiwanis Club is having a pancake breakfast. I mean, it was so bad. Anyway, fast forward even more. Eventually, they wanted me to do them on camera. Eventually, they wanted me and had me do my own little talk show called Community Touch, which again was featuring all these nonprofit organizations. And then get this, Lovely, they said, we're going to have you do the weather. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. I went home and go, what the heck am I thinking? Am I crazy? Again, just because I've never done something doesn't mean I can't. So I took a few courses of meteorology at the University of Illinois. Now, fast forward, we ended up having a 3-women weather team. We probably were the only one in the country that had 3 women doing the weather. But I got to tell you, it was the best training ground for live television because there's no script. So I was there at that station for 3 years. Then I got called to Tampa, Florida, where I was the director of community relations. I was the only female in upper management. Talk about trying to push through the glass ceiling.
Absolutely.
Okay. And within a year, they had me doing the morning news. Oh, and by the way, you're still going to have your management job. I was working 80 hours a week, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, being on the air at 5 o'clock in the morning, staying in the newsroom till around 9 or 9:30. Then I'd go upstairs, put my manager's hat on and do that job until later on in the day. Sometimes I'd go out and do speeches in the evening. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I finally, after 4 years, said, I can't do both these jobs. I took myself off the air. I took myself off the anchor position. And I truly believed if God wanted me back on the air, that would happen. Well, a year later, I got the call from the station in Boston, the ABC affiliate in Boston. And it was for the news magazine show called Chronicle. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And so I got the job, and within a year, I was back on the air doing 2 jobs. I have a sign on my back, Lovely, that says, please give me 2 jobs to do at the same time.
Because you're able.
Because I'm able and I'm crazy. And so I did Chronicle, and I was anchoring the morning news again, getting up, at dark 30 and working a million hours. And finally, I ended up stopping doing Chronicle, and I only ended up in the news. So that was for 28 years I was in television. But again, Lovely, the last couple of years, at about 25, 26 years, I was like, I wonder if there's something else I'm supposed to do. Again, I had no clue. I had no clue. All I knew was at this point in time, I was getting older. The women were getting younger. And I kept thinking, okay, what is Liz going to do next? And I truly felt like, okay, I knew that I had been blessed with gifts and talents. Thank you, God. Knew I wanted to use them and be of service. I knew that I had experience and expertise and skills that I had honed over all these years. So how could I take that and use it? I began quietly and confidentially talking to people I trusted. I thought they were confidential conversations. For the most part, I think they were. But I said to them, what does somebody like me do when you think you're ready to leave TV? Their answers were so entertaining sometimes, because one of them said, well, I see you read the news every night. Trust me, it's more than just reading the news. And what I learned was I had to be able to figure out that TV has a language all of its own. And I had to figure out how to translate it to the corporate world. I'm sure you've experienced some of that as well.
Absolutely.
And so, for example, breaking news in TV very much is like crisis management in the corporate world. Being a project manager in the corporate world is very much like being a producer or a reporter in television. The skills are the same. And so once I was able to figure that out, I thought, now I can speak their language. And I began to really understand what my skill set was. And finally, I'd kind of narrowed it down to 3 lanes. I thought, well, I could be some communications expert for a company. I don't know who. I could maybe be an executive director at a nonprofit, although I'd never done that before either. Or I could launch my business, and I could teach people about presence and public speaking and presentation skills and storytelling and leadership and, oh yes, media training too. And Lovely, I was so fortunate that one of my mentors said to me, Liz, you're well known, you're well respected, you have credibility. That is value. Why would you give that value to somebody else?
Yes.
Launch your business, and if in 6 months or 9 months you don't like it, you don't have any clients, you can always go do something else. A kaleidoscope went click, and I made the decision in that moment that I was going to launch a business. Now, talk about imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs. Okay. I never, ever wanted to run my own business. I didn't think I was smart enough to run my own business. Okay. Yeah, I know, girl, you get it. You get it. And so, but I was like, okay. And I believed in my heart that if fear was the only thing standing in my way, that simply was not a good enough reason. 6 weeks later, I launched my business. I left television, and I haven't looked back. And that was 10 years ago. And here we are today.
There's so much. There's so much. I promise you, I was having this conversation with my husband yesterday, and I said, I didn't even really tell him. I said, babe, I want you to look at this bio and just tell me what you think. And he's reading your bio. He stops and he looks at me. And then he pulls the car over, and pulls it. We kind of stop at a red light. We pull the car over, and he says to me, baby, you know that the reason she's talking to you is because she's going to feed into you what you already know about yourself. And when you mentioned fear, one of the biggest hurdles that I had to learn as a grown woman,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a difference, right? Is that fear is just a new door. It's a new lesson. It's a new opportunity. And a lot of the times, the things that we fear, it's the unknown because we want to control what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we doubt our ability because we think we're in spaces that don't belong to us. And when you create a space organically, be it in corporate America, be it an entrepreneur, when you create that space for you, that by itself is the blessing. That's the lesson. And I love that so far, every time you say, and then another thing happened, the authentic and organic way that it grew,
Right.
and you having belief in yourself. And I think that that's something that a lot of us could learn from you. I believe that people who come before us, they can instill in us so much. And I love, I just wonderful story.
Well, thank you for saying that I believed in myself, because I must have somewhere, but that's not to say that I was not afraid,
Yeah.
because I was afraid.
Yeah.
And two quotes I'm going to share with you. One, which is from my grandmother, Dr. Dorothy Chaco. She was a medical doctor in India and started the first leprosy colony there. And she would say this, I'd hear it from my mother, I'd hear it all over my life: no knowledge is ever wasted. Now, the full quote is, no knowledge is ever wasted in the good Lord's sight.
Yes.
But no knowledge is ever wasted. So think about that, because what that finally, I finally got it when I launched my own business. It finally made sense to me, because people were like, how did you go from being this singing person and this high school teacher to having this amazing award-winning, Emmy award-winning television career to doing what you're doing now? Well, for me, what I discovered was what my themes and patterns are, what the dots were that I could connect. For example, when I was teaching high school music and singing, it was storytelling and teaching my students, and I was singing. Then when I was on television, I was sharing other people's stories using my voice. As a communications consultant coach, I'm helping other people tell their stories and learn how to use their voice.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as a keynote speaker, I am using my voice to tell my story along with my book. So the themes for me, the knowledge and the experience that is not wasted, that continue to recreate my life, were storytelling and using my voice. And I prefer the term recreation as opposed to reinvention. To me, reinvention means you're doing a complete 180, and there's nothing wrong with using that word.
Yeah.
What I like about recreation means you created something before, and you're creating yet another chapter using all that knowledge, using all that experience that you have. You're bringing it with you. And particularly for women, this is not gender based, but a lot of women feel like, oh, well, I haven't done that, so I can't go after this. I haven't crossed every T and dotted every I. And I want people, men and women, to understand you know more than you think you know, and you need to trust that.
Mm.
You need to explore that. You need to discover, what are my themes and patterns? What dots can I connect? That's quote number one: no knowledge is ever wasted. The other one, I started my business, man, Dr. Robert Schuller, Reverend Dr. Robert Schuller, kept me going on this one. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? What would any of us do, Lovely, if we knew we weren't going to fail? What would we do differently? And what is failure anyway? What does it mean? What's your definition of failure? We're all going to quote unquote fail at some point in time along the way at something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like to call it failure. I like to call them, that was a lesson.
Me too.
It's only a failure if you don't learn the lesson.
That is my definition of failure.
Yes,
Yep. It's not failure. It's an opportunity to learn.
It's an opportunity. And when you come across those doorways of fear that you have to go through, to use your word, that fear, okay, what am I supposed to learn about this? What am I supposed to learn about myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we grow. As long as we are willing to continue and grow, we become our best selves. Now, granted, we have to find the courage. We have to be brave. We have to give ourselves permission to look outside the box. And that's really hard to do. I get it. I've looked outside the box many times now. And I'm ready to look outside the box again. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Oh, I'm sure you're already outside the box. You're just tapping across the box, tapping across the box. And I love that. Whenever I record a podcast, there are a few things that I'm always trying to make sure that I do, that I stay open and I'm actively listening so that I can absorb and comprehend the conversation. It's huge for me because in my 20s, I didn't do that. And some of the lessons I missed, but I've made it here.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
But also it's being able to relate and correlate some of the moves that I've made throughout my life. It's just a measuring stick sometimes to affirm that I've done some of the work. And I do a lot of healing work because that was big for me. In order to become an entrepreneur, I really believe that you have to work on yourself internally because when you
100%.
have to depend on, you have to trust you. You have to trust your decision making, and you have to make sure that your triggers and your trauma don't affect your ability to see the blessings in front of you.
I believe that we all have healing, some more than others. Sorry, that's just life. But we all are here to learn. I think it was Oprah who said, this is the Earth School. We all have healing that needs to happen in our lives, whether it's trauma or whether it's just even a little thing. We all have healing and growth. And when we pay attention to that, I truly believe that's what allows us to live our dreams, to create a new reality, to create a next chapter for ourselves. But we have to do the work. We have to do the work.
And, I was having a conversation with another entrepreneur the other day, Miss Sydney Riker, and we were talking about what healing looks like. And we named it the cave. When you go into yourself and you have to really trust who you are, what you have to bring to yourself. I always tell people, focusing on yourself isn't selfish, because when you trust yourself, you can hear other people and trust them. You can extend that energy out to them. And I love that you not only trust yourself, but you trust the steps that you were making along the way. And like you said earlier, this is not to say that you don't have fear, but the fear doesn't prevent you from making the move. And a lot of times the fear prevents people from making the move.
I think learning to trust ourselves, I know I can speak for this personally, that's probably one of the biggest lessons I continue to learn, to really learn to trust myself. And sometimes it's about being able to get that quiet, that still. I do a lot of journaling. I've been journaling for 40 plus years, Lovely. It's all extemporaneous. But for me, it truly helps me get in touch with that inner voice and to hopefully shut out the noise so that I can learn to understand what my inner guidance is suggesting to me, what that inner truth is suggesting to me, what that inner voice is, not the other noisy voices that say, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that, but what is the real truth? And that's really hard to do.
Yes.
It's really hard to do.
But it's worth it.
It is worth it. And I know as I've gotten older, I have more confidence in myself than I've ever had before. I trust myself more than I've ever had before, but it's because of those hard lessons, AKA failures,
Yes.
that I've gone through, that I've really tried to learn from, that now allow me to trust myself more. But I had to do the work.
Yes. And I also know that when we're doing this work, I tell people all the time, don't look at TV for this. Don't look at these external ideals on what healing looks like. Everybody has their own journal. They have their own path. They have their own way of healing, understanding, comprehending. And sometimes we get stuck on words. We get stuck on actions, when at the end of the day, we just want you to feel better. Because when you feel aligned with yourself, that confidence that comes out is a shield. And that shield really, it allows so many wonderful things to walk in. And it's not that hurt doesn't walk in with those different blessings that you receive,
Ain't
because
that the truth?
we all get knocked down, but you get up 2 minutes faster, 30 seconds faster, and you're able to grieve the loss of the thing that didn't happen, or the idea that you thought was going to happen, and then you can move past it and find that new light, find that new lesson. And that is huge when you talk about, even if you're in the corporate world, these tools work everywhere in your personal life and your professional life.
And that's one of the things that I love about the work that I'm doing, and I'm sure you do as well. You can certainly relate to this. It's transformative. And while I have a goal to a vision for my life to teach and inspire and motivate people to live their best life, that can mean anything for anybody. Everybody has their own definition. But what it boils down to, I believe, is that transformative power of helping people from where they are to where they want to go to who they want to be. And it's an honor and a privilege to help people. And I'm helping people in the arena of personal life, but also professional life. And to your point, it's so true. They cross over. And it's funny because sometimes people will say to me, when it comes to the communication side of things, whether I'm helping people with presence or public speaking or storytelling and things like that, they're, well, what industries do you work in? Communication is communication. Okay. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. Sure, there's some subtle nuances if you're in tech versus high finance or something like that. But it comes down to communicating, connecting, and engaging with your audience. How are you going to connect with them from the moment you begin a conversation, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's in a small group, whether it's on a big stage, it doesn't matter. It's communication, it's storytelling, and how are you going to put that content together, that message together, so that it's relatable and connecting with people and engaging people. So I always find it entertaining when, well, what industries do you work in? And have you ever worked in our industry? I'm like, yeah, I've worked in every industry just about. I can't think of one that I haven't worked in at this point, right?
I think that I was listening to what you had to say, and I was thinking to myself, it's so huge, because I'm one of those people, and I don't speak for other people, but I'm really big on how you treat the people who are quote unquote below you. How do you talk to, what does your nonverbal language look like? How open are you? Do you allow that energy to pass through you? Do you block it out? Is your face up? And I always tell people, I do suffer from RBF, but I think I suffer from RBF working I've worked in the legal field, and you have to really school your face when you're in depositions or when you are talking to different people, because you can't let them see the emotion that's happening until you can get to that happy space. And
okay, I'm going to jump in because RBF, in case people don't know, is resting bitchy face.
Yes,
okay?
yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. RBF.
Some people may not know what that means, but we'll talk. We can fill them in a little bit more about that.
And it's really, I always tell, it's a stone face. It's when you just let all the emotion, and that is it. The end. Yeah. See, and seen, so it's just wonderful. But I always tell people, I want to smile. In my head, I'm skipping most of the time. I'm just skipping. I'm happy. I'm enjoying this life. But I understand that when we're talking about communicating, one of the big steps for me was learning how to read the room, the energy in the room, learning how to, and usually I'm drawn to the person who walks in the space and closes themselves off. It's a habit for me to go over and say, hello, how are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need anything? Would you like to sit together? Because I know what it feels like to walk into those spaces. I am a Black woman, and I work for 25 years in a predominantly white area. So when you work in law, I think when I first started working, it might have been 6 Black people in a building of almost 300. That is a little isolating.
Sure.
And it took me years. It took me about 10 years to learn how to be a Black woman in corporate America. And to a lot of people, they're like, I don't understand that you're a Black woman. when you work in an area where you have to conform to and adapt yourself to, you don't always get to bring the pieces of you that make you excited, that bring the best to the table. And at that 10-year point, I said, if I can't be me, I'm not going to be able to be great at my job.
Right.
And once I discovered, oh, I can be me and great at my job, my career accelerated, right? But that also transferred over into mental health, because I didn't realize that that 25 to 30 years that I've worked in the legal field would completely transform how I saw mental health in corporate America and outside of it. And that's why I'm in the mental health field right now.
So many things to say about what you just talked about, speaking of listening and paying attention. So the first thing I want to touch on is that nonverbal communication. 65% of what we communicate is nonverbal. The other 35% is our verbal delivery. But that 65%, that's a huge piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking all of your body language, from your eyes, from your face, from your smile, what your arms are doing, what your posture is. All of that is body language that you are communicating something to someone consciously and unconsciously. And so many people don't even realize what they're communicating, often unintentionally. And you brought up the whole point about smiling. And I can understand from the legal background that you have and what environment you were in, that that probably was challenging. And I also believe that for women, oftentimes we feel like, well, I can't really smile because I'm not going to be taken seriously. I'm going to appear too feminine, for example. And I say, let's break that barrier down, because smiling and eye contact shows somebody you are open to them. You are open to communicating. You're open to connecting with them. Now, obviously, context matters, but that's hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
So working with people on what their body language looks like, and then obviously figuring out the other 35% of what they're saying and how they're delivering it, that's a whole nother story.
Love
But
that.
it's so important how you communicate, what you communicate. And so being able to help people figure that out. And when I'm working with people, whether it's one-on-one or in workshops, I use a video camera. It's the truth tool.
Mm-hmm.
Because people will say, well, I think I have great eye contact. And so I'm in a conversation with them, and where are they looking? You know, they're and I'm like, well, last time I checked, the answer was not up there, nor was it on the floor. Now, what's interesting is, because we're still doing a lot of virtual work, and obviously we're on Zoom today for our podcast recording. What's hard about working on Zoom or any of those platforms, Teams, etc., is that when you are having to deliver any kind of content virtually, guess what? Now, all of a sudden, more often than not, that 65% of your communication of somebody reading your body language and you reading theirs is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to give more energy. You have to give 100% of energy, because you're not going to feel it back. And that's why I believe if you do anything virtually and you do it well, you are tired when you're done, if you have given 100% of the energy, because you're not going to feel it back.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's so important that people understand that you have to give more. You're not going to feel it. You're not going to feel it, but you have to give more.
I love that. And I agree with you. I love the example of when you're standing outside in the grass, when you get to feel the grass between your toes, you get to feel the coolness of the ground, you can feel the energy of the earth. And when we're standing in front of each other, we're passing off this energy. We're giving negative, positive energy. You can kind of look into someone's eyes and see a little bit more. Are they afraid? Is this too much? You know, do you need to step out of the room for a little bit? You get to feel these things. And when we're doing it virtually, you hope that they feel your genuineness. You hope that they feel your openness or your vulnerability. Sometimes you hope that they feel that you want to end a meeting, because you're like, we've been in a meeting for 2 hours and we're not fixing it. If we could just stop this meeting, that would be wonderful. Nobody ever reads you at that time. It doesn't matter what face you have.
But I have to give one other tip, and the fact that we're still doing so much virtual work, and some people are really good at it and some people aren't. And I know when I'm coaching clients and some of them are virtual clients, thank goodness I'm getting back to more in-person work because I love it, but doing it virtually still works. And, they're looking down like this. I'm like, okay, when you're speaking, here's a tip for everybody. When you're speaking, you have to look into the camera because that's how you're going to connect with someone. You have to look into the camera when you are speaking. If you're not speaking and you're listening to someone else, then you can kind of look at their facial expression. But people say to me all the time, well, but then I can't see everybody. Well, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is to connect with them. That's the point, to have them feel like you're connecting and communicating with them. And so I'll do an example of like, okay, I'm looking at Lovely right now, but do you feel like I'm looking at you?
No.
No, no. Now do you feel like I'm looking at you?
Yes.
Yes. So there you go. Just one free tip for everybody.
I love it. But, and I think that that's one of the things that happened when the pandemic happened. There was no training for any of us. You had some people who were already familiar with Zoom, they were familiar with Teams maybe, and they knew they had some etiquette, but just the etiquette of connection and conversation, being able to use, and you have a lot of people who aren't comfortable on camera in general.
Right.
And the insecurities that kick in, I wish that people even they never speak about that, but the insecurities of a person who you say, I want you to be on camera, and they tell you they're the same person to say, I don't want to take a picture. Like, please, please don't.
I get very frustrated when I'm on a Zoom with somebody. And granted, it's, there's maybe 20, 30, 40 people on, and some of them are on camera and some of them aren't. I'm like, well, I'm not connecting with you.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, we could talk about Zoom
Yes.
forever.
No, but I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
One of the big things I wanted to speak with you about was reading the room. Like, how do you read the room when it's so that you can redirect your conversation or maybe change the energy in the room? What are your tips on that?
Well, reading the room is hugely important along with knowing your audience. So let's just start there. You have to know your audience. Who is in the room? When I'm doing, for example, a workshop and I've got 12 or 15 people, I look up every single person's LinkedIn profile or their company profile. I want to know who's in the room. I want to know who's in the room. I might even look at their social media. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? What do they talk about? What do they like? They have pets, they have family. I want to know who they are as much as I possibly can without having met them. That helps me read the room, whether it's virtual or in person. When you're in person and you don't have that opportunity, say I'm giving a keynote speech to 10,000 people. All right, I'm not going to know everybody in the room. But what I want to be able to do is I want to understand who the audience is. And if it's an organization, what are some of their challenges? Why did they bring me in? Because I really try to customize my remarks for that particular audience. So that helps you read the room. The next thing that helps you read the room is reading people's body language. Now, you'll see some people who will be kind of sitting there like this. And sometimes those are the ones who are the most fun to try and engage. I have to admit. Sorry, I have to admit it. But I look for people who are nodding or going, wait a minute, no. Or I look for people who are looking at me, who are actively engaged, but I also work really hard to engage the audience. To know that I can read them. And so I sometimes will ask a lot of questions. I get them involved, I get them engaged so that I can feel like, okay, this group over here, they're really engaged. This row, not so much. But sometimes, depending on the audience, I may even go down and be in the audience, and then I will literally try to engage someone. I don't want to put somebody on the spot in an uncomfortable position, but even in a workshop, I will do that. I'll notice someone kind of sitting there and kind of, not that they're not paying attention, but they look very deep in thought, for example. And I might say to them, Sally or Joe, I can see that the wheels are spinning. What's going through your mind? What's resonating for you? Is there anything that's confusing about what I'm sharing with you? And see if I can't get them to open up a little bit. That's much easier to do in a workshop.
Yes.
But you have to be able to know who the audience is. And there was an organization that I was being considered to speak to, and I think they went in a completely different direction, and they decided not to have a keynote speaker, which their mistake, not mine. Anyway, that would have been wonderful. But I looked up the organization. I looked up their event. I wanted to see what this was all about because I'd never heard of them. And so I did my homework.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I'm doing podcast guests and I record for my show, maybe it's my journalism background, Lovely, that I just do tons of homework. I read people's books, I listen to podcasts they've been on, I read articles that they have done. It's in my DNA from having been a journalist for so long. I do my homework. But then that helps me know how to guide the conversation, or if they go off on another direction, I can say, I was reading about X, Y, and Z, or I heard you say X, Y, and Z. And so that's how you really learn to read the audience, is you have to know the audience first. You have to know them as much as you can.
I love that. And I think that's my agendas usually throw people off, especially people who aren't in a professional setting, because it doesn't matter who you are. I do an agenda. It could be my mom. It could the neighbor next door.
Oh, I appreciated that you sent it to me. I'm like, oh, this girl is organized. I love it.
Because but it's a big thing for me because it helps me to
Okay.
not only understand you,
Yeah.
but also it helps me to figure out if we're a good fit. Because I don't want you to feel like you're forcing yourself to have a conversation with somebody that you would not normally. This isn't going to go anywhere, and it really helps me. And not that I want to have conversation, and I don't mind confrontation, but I need it to have a resolution. I want it to be something where we're both learning from each other and we're understanding each other. And it does not always. I've done some podcasts where by the time I was done, I was sleepy. I'm like, I am tired from the amount of energy I had to put out to try to keep everything going.
Right. Hopefully that's not the case today.
No. You've given us so many tips, but sidebar, I love how much you love what you're doing. To me, that is huge, especially in this day and time where everything is so money driven, but not spiritually driven. And I'm not talking about religion. I mean, your spirit wanting to connect with other people, see them do well. You want to help them be the best versions of themselves, but you want them to understand who they are as a person holistically from the top to the bottom, because then you can connect with so many people because you think you're so different than everyone else, and we're so much alike. It's scary, but I know most people think we think we're different.
Yeah. For me, I am passionate about the work that I'm doing, whether it's speaking in front of an audience where there's that wonderful energy exchange and people are learning from one another, whether it's working with my clients who I often see the progress in them before they see it. But Lovely, when they see it, it's like the best feeling in the world. It's like icing on the cake. And then when I'm talking with my podcast guests, to be able to hear their stories, because one of the reasons I decided to do my show was that I felt that if people could hear other people's stories of transformation, of creating next chapters for themselves, they might say, if that person can do it, maybe I can too. Can too. And then with my book, I mean, it's so funny. Dare to Own You, taking your
Dare to Own You. I love the name. I said, oh, okay. She just really was going. She wanted us to take accountability. I said, okay.
I did, and I do. It's called Dare to Own You, taking your authenticity and dreams into your next chapter. And my favorite review and recommendation came from Forbes, who called the book a teaching memoir. And it just so brilliantly encapsulated what I wanted to do and what I was trying to accomplish. Yes, it's sort of my personal journey, but through my 4 chapters.
Yes.
But it's also giving people an opportunity at the end of each chapter to really reflect on their life. Where am I? What experiences have I had? And some of my stories may remind you of experiences that you have had. So what have you learned from them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even so much what do you want out of life as much as it is how do you want to feel every single day?
Mm-hmm.
Am I thriving in my relationships? Am I thriving in my work environment, or am I just striving?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Am I happy every day? How happy do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? And these are tough questions, and the answers are scary sometimes because it may
Yes.
mean change. And let's face it, change is hard, and the older we get, speaking from experience,
I'm
it's
with you. Don't worry. I'm falling
it's
behind you. I'm
hard.
running.
It's hard to change. But that's what it takes is we have to be willing. I liken us to rubber bands, Lovely. We have a rubber band on the outside of our fingers here, of our hands. And whether this is professional development or personal development, this is my comfort zone. I'm not going to stretch that rubber band any further than here. Nope, can't go outside that box. Well, guess what I do? Shh. I
Stretch
stretch
it.
people way out here. Now, you're not going to live way out here 24/7, but if this was your comfort zone and you've stretched yourself and you're now here, guess what? You've grown.
Mm-hmm.
You've grown and you've learned and you've taken yourself to yet another level. You've gotten out of your comfort zone, which is
I
what we have to
love
do.
that. I love that. And I always think to myself, what am I rediscovering about myself? Right.
Right.
Because I feel like I'm 48 right now. And this morning I was doing my meditation for about 30 minutes, and I got out the bed and I said, oh, okay. And I named all the things that I wanted to do today. I had like a full wash your hair,
Here's
nails,
my to-do list.
just these are all the things that I wanted to do. And I stopped and I had a moment where I said, I could feel my 12-year-old self say, we remember when we used this product to do our hair? And I thought to myself, I was 12 the first time I used the product that I put in my hair today. And it was
Wow.
just that full circuit moment that you have that you don't always get to think about because there's
Right.
so many things in the way. And it made me think to myself how far that 12-year-old girl would be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, it's not what
She's
are you
knocking it
doing?
out of the park is what she's doing.
I'm like, but it's what are we doing? Because I get to bring that 12-year-old, my inner child, that 12-year-old child of who I was, I get to bring her along with me on this journey that I didn't believe I would have never thought about this. And I love how you talk about the different levels of your life, the different stages of your life, because I'm on my third stage, but this stage right here feels so good. I may be tap dancing for a little bit here because it just feels so nice.
As you should, as you should. I do believe that whether we're actually pivoting like you have and I have or other people have to career chapters or personal chapters, in our 20s, I think is the time to experiment. And we do change and we do grow. And then our 30s, we typically have yet another chapter, regardless of personal or professional. And same thing when we're in our 40s and when we're in our 50s and when we're in our 60s and beyond.
Yes.
And when we can appreciate where we are, and a lot of that has to do, and I still work really hard on this, living in the present moment, because we're always future thinking or thinking about the past. How and when's this going to happen? When's that going to happen? I'm aiming for this, and goals are wonderful. I believe in them, believe me. But can we also enjoy where we are?
Mm-hmm. I
Can
love
we be
that.
present? Like I loved your analogy about, being in the grass, walking, feeling the earth and the energy from the earth. And that was talking about, in somewhat, being present, but feeling the energy of the
Yes.
room.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, can you feel that energy on a day-to-day basis? I love to walk outside. I love to walk the Charles River here in Boston or over at the seaport, or I'll run, but I love being outside because I feel that Mother Earth energy.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that meditation is that for me.
yes, it feeds my soul.
I love it. I love it. Meditation and music. I tell people
Yes.
if I can move my body, it's not always on rhythm or the time. I don't even lie to anybody anymore. I've given that part up. But any chance that I get where I get to really just embrace the moment And some of that comes with aging, but I think a lot of that it comes with when you learn to love who you are,
Mhm.
even your failures, like when you are in the midst of some of the darkest moments, but you can think of one good thing that you did that day, one good thing that you witnessed, you've seen. When you can find joy in the darkest of moments, that's presence, and we don't
100.
always think about that.
No, I mean, look, I've had my share of challenges, personal, professional, my dark days, my depressing days, whatever. And I have to force myself sometimes to go, okay, Liz, can you think of even one thing to be thankful
One
for today?
thing.
One thing. And I have found, particularly when I'm in my sad moments, because I have them, and I'll share with you a personal thing I'm going through right now, which is my 89-year-old mother is unfortunately not as well as she used to be.
Mm,
And I am the primary care person for her medical, and she lives 3,000 miles away in California. I'm in Massachusetts.
wow.
So I'm on constant everyday doctors, nurses, caseworkers, et cetera. And the grief that I'm feeling already,
Mm, mhm.
knowing that she has fewer chapters ahead of her than she has behind her.
Yes.
And there are days when it's really tough. And I was just in California with her, helping her do some downsizing, going through thousands of photographs. Okay. And some of them are still sitting here. And you can see this one. Oops, this is me as a little girl.
Is
I was, I was 9 years old.
that a
Okay.
little hat or a
No,
purse?
it's in Hawaii, and that's my uli uli. So
Oh,
grew up in the islands until I was 10. Anyway,
okay.
it was really, it was wonderful to be with her. It was
Mm,
emotionally draining for both of us because I had to be tough on her.
mm,
I had to almost be the parent now and say, Mom, you don't need to keep every single photograph. You don't need to keep this outfit that's 60 years old.
yeah, yeah.
You don't need to keep this. And I came home exhausted, and I found myself feeling grief,
Mhm,
myself feeling depression,
mhm.
found myself experiencing, I don't want to say trauma, but just a lot of unsettled, anxious emotions. And I
Yes,
had to really work hard to say, okay, Liz, what can you be thankful for? I'm thankful she's still alive. I'm thankful that even though I don't know how many more days, years, months she has left, I am thankful that I still have her because a lot of people don't.
yes.
And so and I find for myself, regardless of that experience that I'm sharing with you, but other experiences where if I'm really feeling bummed about something, I have to work hard to find what I'm grateful for, but the pendulum does eventually move
So
over.
I love that, and I'm so proud of you for even allowing yourself to feel grief, because that is, to me, that was a huge game changer in my healing. Because in my, I always say, my culture, how I grew up, we don't grieve. You don't grieve. You hold it together, you suck it down, you pack it in, you and then you keep moving, because we don't have time to grieve. We have to, we got to pay the bills, we have to move. And I think that when you stop and give yourself permission to grieve, it is a human process. It's a normal process. It's how your spirit calms itself down. And
Right.
then you can tackle the next thing and tackle the next thing, because you're releasing those emotions. So, one, congratulations on having an 89-year-old mom. I I'm
No.
hoping my mom makes it that long, because I want to get on her nerves. That is my
Oh, I've been
goal.
on my mom's nerves, believe me.
But also the fact that you love and care about her and she's a part of your story makes it such a wonderful thing. Like you said, that a lot of people don't get to have those experiences.
Right. And some people find it odd that, well, why are you grieving? She's already alive. I'm like, well, because she's changing. I'm missing the mom that she used to be. I'm missing the woman that she used to be, and knowing she will never be that woman again.
Yeah.
I might get glimpses of that woman again,
Yeah.
but there's decline cognitively, there's decline physically, there's a lot of declining going on, and
Yeah.
it's hard.
It
And
is.
it's hard. And so there's that grief that I have to move through. I am moving through and accepting life is changing.
I love that. And You summed up the reason why I started Healing Through Conversations, honestly. The Healing Through Conversations podcast was created because there are words that we all need to hear. There are places in our lives where we are trying to maneuver through, and it doesn't always have to be sad. Sometimes we're so elated and we feel so much joy, we want to connect with somebody who knows what that joy and that happiness feels like. But there are times in our lives when we are indecisive, when we feel a little lost, and when we have these conversations, it connects us so much. It gives us those bridges that we need that we didn't know were out there.
Exactly, exactly. And we all are connected in some way, shape, or form, aren't we?
I love it. It's
We
so
are.
wonderful. Thank
We
you so
are.
much for being on the podcast. Can you tell everybody about about your book, where they can find you, your company?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the first thing people can do is just go to my website, which is lizbrunner.com. That's LIZBRUNNER.com. And there you will find everything about my keynote speaking. You'll find everything about my book, Dare to Own You. You'll find everything about my consulting communications coaching program. You'll find everything about my podcast. So it's all there if you just go to that website. And I'm on all the major directories with my podcast. And you can get my book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you just go to my website, I think that's the easiest place for people to find me. Plus, I'm on Instagram. I would love people to follow me. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm still on Twitter and Pinterest as well, but the three main ones I'm most active on are Instagram and, hey, sign up for my newsletter. It's only once a month, okay? I don't flood people's inboxes, but I try to share tips and techniques and blog posts and some news and things like that. But I'd love for people to sign up. And you can do so again on my website, lizbrunner.com.
I love it. I love it. And I love when we get to share knowledge and bring people joy and help them decide what they want to do. Because sometimes you need someone to give you permission to live out loud. And you're giving
Yes.
people permission to live out loud. And I love that.
Oh, I have one more thing I can tell people about. I also have online courses at brunneracademy.com. So it's how to be a rock star public speaker. And then I have four short courses that align with my book. So I would love it if people check that out as well. And it's really such a privilege and an honor to speak with you and to be able to share with your community what I'm doing, how people can connect with me. So thank you for that opportunity. I greatly appreciate it, Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you being on my podcast. I feel so blessed today. You've given us so many jewels to really think about. And I appreciate your vulnerability and your openness with your life, because you didn't have to share and you did. So I hope that we get to speak again. I appreciate you so much, and I'll be in contact with you soon.
Sounds great. Be
Thank
well,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So, guys, did Liz set your heart on fire like she set my heart on fire? I feel like if I have 30% of the energy that she has, the light, the pure joy that's just radiating off of her, but the authenticity and the openness to not only tell you about her journey, but to help you walk through your own journey, right? Because I think sometimes when we see people with such high accolades, we forget that they came from somewhere. They started somewhere, and that they are still trying to get to somewhere. So I don't think that there's been too many times in my life where I almost didn't want to say anything. I just wanted Liz to talk for the duration of the podcast, because she was dropping all these little gems and none of them were unattainable. All of them were attainable, right? Know who you are. Create a language that connects with the people that you're trying to connect with. Find strength in all of the knowledge that you've gotten. Don't be afraid to change chapters in your book, because those chapters will be connected. Understanding what the theme is that runs through your life. I think that right there. And if your light is too bright, tell the people looking at you to put on sunglasses. Liz, I hear you. Thank you so much, guys, for joining the podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow, you know me, send a courier pigeon, do what you can do to support the podcast. We so appreciate it. We're trying to grow our community. And I feel like the more we talk, when we connect, it gives us permission to articulate our feelings, wants, needs, and desires so that we can advocate for not only ourselves, for the people that we love. Be good to yourself. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found some healing, connection, and joy. Until next time, bye, loves.